On this super live unboxing, we're going to take a look at the Philips Fidelio X3. About 6 years ago, I think it was almost exactly 6 years ago, Philips released the Fidelio X2 and then later kind of followed it up with the re-release of the X2 HR. It's a very well-regarded headphone that's been out, again, about 6 years, and they finally decided to come out with a sequel. Now, the X2 HR is a headphone that I have reviewed previously. In fact, I think the X2 HR was actually one of my first audio reviews on this channel, and it's a headphone that I've, in fact, got still sitting back here. But here we've got the X3, and this is, well, as of this recording, this headphone's not actually available yet. So, according to Philips, this headphone launches on September 15th, at least here in the United States. According to Amazon, however, they're shipping it on August 31st, so one way or another, this headphone's coming out pretty soon. So what do you got to look forward to? So like the original X2, this is a 50mm dynamic driver open back headphone, just to kind of set the stage, all right? And I think also worth setting another piece to set the stage is the price. The Fidelio X3 comes in at $350, which is not cheap. There's a lot of headphones that you can get for $350 that are pretty good. In fact, some of my favorite ones sitting over here, and I'm interested to find out, is the Fidelio X3 gonna be one of them? This is gonna be just a live, quick first look and an unboxing. I haven't listened to this headphone, so this is not a review. If you're looking for a review, please subscribe to the channel and stick around because I will be following up with the review. But for now, we're just gonna unbox this thing. And this is a live stream as well, so if you're watching in the live chat right now and you've got any questions about the Fidelio X3 that a person who's just unboxed it can answer, please ask those questions in the live chat. I'm gonna go ahead and go through the unboxing, show you what you get with the Fidelio X3, and then do a little bit of comparisons between this thing physically versus the X2 that I've got sitting back here. And then after that, we'll take some time to answer your questions if you've got any. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the X3. Unfortunately, this box is a little large, so I'm not even gonna try and spin it. But there we have the Fidelio X3 box. Curiously, they've already got a couple of awards, despite the fact that, again, I think this headphone's not available anywhere, but kudos to them for getting some awards. Of course, they've also got the high-res audio sticker, which, if that's important to you, there you go. For me, not a big deal, but it is interesting that it's there. Yeah, like I mentioned, this is an over-ear open back headphone. And what that means for the uninitiated, if you've never used a pair of open back headphones before, if you're listening to these things and you're sitting next to somebody on the couch, they're gonna hear what you're listening to. In fact, you're gonna be able to hear what they're listening to because these things ostensibly don't really block out. They don't stop sound from passing in and out of the ear cup. But let's see what else we can find out about this thing. And this is probably not quite in focus, but let's see what we can do. All right, so we have some specs here. Frequency response range of 5 Hertz to 40,000 Hertz. That's not really any surprise, doesn't mean a ton, but that does mean that it qualifies for being high res. It's got a sensitivity, a claimed sensitivity of 98 decibels, and this will be interesting actually because the Fidelio X2, one of the things that's especially nice about it, I mean, it's got some really nice premium build, but I think one of the things that sets the X2 apart from other open back headphones is that it's an open back headphone that can be powered very easily from a smartphone. Now with 98 decibels, I think that this thing should also be fairly drivable from a smartphone, but we'll find out. Impedance of 30 ohms, which that doesn't mean too much without that sensitivity rating along with it. Total harmonic distortion of less than 0.1%. These sorts of claims, I don't make too much of them. And then down here, a 50mm dynamic driver, which is kind of what we expect. Also a few spoilers about what's in the box, but we'll skip that for now. Go and refocus here. And I mean, okay, I guess we can go around the back, see if there's anything interesting. We got another high-res sticker, and that's, oh, that's a good high-res sticker. But I don't know. A lot of this information I don't think is going to really tell us too much about it, kind of telling you a little bit about the build, but we will find that out right now because we're going to unbox this thing. At least we're going to try to. It's a box within a box, and this box that's inside that box looks exactly like the box that it was inside of. That is a curious choice, but here we do have some tape to cut through, so I will pull out my trusty razor. One of these days I'm going to cut myself live on YouTube, and it's going to be a mess. But not today. Now we figure out how this box opens. Not all boxes are created equal. Ooh, we got magnets. If you're a fan of magnets, there are magnets down here. And not a ton of room here on my desk, but you can see the Fidelios here wrapped up in a nice little cloth baggie. We'll set those things aside for a second. Got a plastic shell in here, as well as a box with presumably some accessories. And inside this accessories box, let's find out what we got. I know I've actually already read the outside of the box. I've got spoilers, unfortunately. But for the rest of you, hopefully this is a fun surprise. So, surprise, we've got information about leather. Interesting. So I did mention that the X2 is kind of, at least I think I mentioned, it's kind of known for its premium build, and ostensibly X3 is going for a similar premium aesthetic, if that sort of thing is important to you, and no shame if it is. Interestingly, you know, most headphones, or a lot of headphones, will have just fake pleather on the ear pads, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is kind of interesting to see that they are playing up the fact that they've got real animal leather. If that's a good thing or a bad thing, kind of depending on your politics. But here we go. And here we've got interesting that they've included this same piece. This also came with the X2. This is a little cable stay that personally I have no idea how to use it. I've had this thing for years and I have no idea how to use this. I'm not a fan, but they've included it again. Of course, they've also included, unsurprisingly, a 3.5 millimeter to 6.3 millimeter adapter, which suggests that these cables that we're about to look at are going to terminate in 3.5. And then, well, you notice that they've sent us they've included two cables. One thing is standing out right away, and I find this a little bit disappointing personally. These cables look way too long. In fact, according to the box, these are 3-meter long cables, which is approximately 10 feet long, which is just way too long for me, for my personal use. I'm not a big fan of cables this long, but we can at least take a look at the quality of this cable, and it's kind of wrapped in a nice cloth fabric, kind of like the cable on the original X2. It's a little bit thicker down here, at least from what I remember. It's been a while since I used the cable that came with my X2. Because it's so long, I actually just don't really like using it, and I prefer using shorter cables that I've gotten. But what's actually interesting about this cable, apart from the fact that it's, I think, way too long, and we'll take a look at this other one that they've sent us. So, two things should be standing out to you right now. Number one, this cable terminates in two separate ends, which is different than the Fidelio X2. The X2 has only got one 3.5 millimeter connector on the left side ear cup. Looks like the X3 is going to have connectors on both the left and the right cups. The other thing that stands out, and maybe this doesn't totally come across, wait a minute, hold on. Interesting. So I don't know, it feels like these things are both, oh wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong end. That's why that's not standing out, duh. Let's go back to the other ends. This is where the other thing will stand out, is we've got a 3.5 millimeter connector on one of these cables, and the other connector, or the other cable, has got a 2.5 millimeter balanced connection. So I think that's actually kind of cool. For a premium headphone to actually come with a balanced cable is kind of rare these days. You know, I kind of figure that a lot of the times when, you know, a hi-fi company sends or sells you a headphone with a ostensibly hi-fi ambitions, and then they'll sell you separately a balanced cable as sort of like an obvious upgrade. I'm not necessarily a big believer in the upgrade of a balanced connection, but I know a lot of folks are, and I guess it's kind of cool that Fidelio has at least included that balanced cable with their headphone. You can see 3 meters is a lot of cable to bunch up, and that is not especially attractive, but we will put that aside for now. Hopefully you can ignore that and feast your eyes on this. So here we go with the X3 reveal. I can hear some silica gel inside there. Actually, let's take a look at the silica gel, just to make sure it's a high quality, high res silica gel. And it does seem to be of the high res variety. Maybe not certified, but I know high res silica gel when I see it. And that's it. Who cares about that? This is what you care about. Here we have the Fidelio X3, and that, I think, like the X2, is a pretty handsome headphone. What do you think? So interesting, they've gone with a pretty different aesthetic over here on the back. The X2s, and I can actually pull them in for comparison if you're curious. Here we have the Fidelio X2 and the X3 next to it. You can see that the X3 actually looks like it's a little bit smaller overall, and I'm kind of curious if that will make it fit maybe a little bit nicer than the X2 does. But yeah, the aesthetic over here on the grills is quite different here on the X3s. The X2s have this, you know, sort of industrial metal grill. I think it's a pretty attractive design, but for the X3s, they've gone with something quite different. It's fabric covered. Kind of reminds me of like Google Home aesthetic, which I don't think is unattractive at all. I think it's quite nice, but I don't know, if I'm perfectly honest with you, between these two, I kind of like the aesthetic of the X2. What do you think? I mean, I do like the size of the X3, and we'll see how this thing looks on my head if it looks any smaller, because I think that is kind of one complaint that one might have about the X2 is that on the head, it's a bit of a large looking headphone. The good news is I don't ever have to look at myself wearing this thing unless I'm doing a video about it, but I don't know, some people care about that sort of stuff. Other things, let's examine the build of the X3 in a little bit more detail. So we've got this yoke here, which appears to be an aluminum frame, which is nice. The ear cups themselves feel like they're a little bit lighter. This is probably a plastic underneath the cloth. And then again, they've gone with a velour pad. I might play with this later to see if these pads are removable, but also a little bit afraid to find out that they're not. But the pads on the Fidelio X2, a couple of notes is that some of them are removable and some of them are not, kind of depending on which batch of Fidelios you got. And I believe I've got the ones with the removable pads like this, and you can kind of see that it is a bespoke mounting. And I'm interested to find out if the X3s are similar or not. I also called out the fact that they are still velour, which is both a positive and a negative. You know, a lot of open back headphones are going to have either a velour or like an Alcantara or a suede. And I like that, but one downside, at least that I've had here, especially with the X2s, is these pads on the X2s are probably the biggest lint magnets of any pad I have. And it's kind of true of a lot of different velour pads, but it's especially true here of the X2s. Now you can see them here. I've got them cleaned up. They look pretty nice. You can, you know, use a little bit of masking tape or like a lint roller or something like that and clean them up, but it is an unfortunate chore you'll have to deal with if you go with a velour pad. Curious to see if these things end up being similarly attractive to lint as the X2, or if they're maybe a little bit more like, you know, something like my Sennheiser HD 600s. I can say that the material here does feel different. The pads still feel like they are a memory foam, so it's a nice slow recovery memory foam. It's going to be pretty comfortable. Pad depth seems roughly the same, although actually the pad depth Feels a little bit deeper here on the X2s than it does in the X3s. But actually, let's just get back to the X3s and kind of going around the build of it. So here on the headband, it appears to be an extension of this metal frame here, but I can't totally confirm that because it is covered in this real genuine leather. And I think it looks pretty nice. Let me give it the smell test. Oh yeah, that actually smells like legit leather. That is quite nice. They've also, stuck with this suspension strap design, which I'm a big fan of. The X2 also have the suspension strap, and what I like about this is you never have to worry about your headphones like unadjusting themselves, or like you put them away and then every time you take them out you have to readjust them to your head size. You don't have to worry about that with the X2s, and the X3s have gone with that same suspension design, so I kind of assume it's going to be the same thing. Interestingly, the flexible headband on the X2s is wrapped in this kind of a mesh fabric, whereas here on the X3s it appears to be wrapped in leather again. But let me give this a smell test because, well, oh, that is also, well, at least it smells like real leather. Well, that's pretty nice, huh? And then down here on the cups, like I mentioned, you get connectors on both cups because unlike the X2, where you've got the connector only on the left side, here with the X3, you are going to have connectors going into both of these. And let's go ahead and throw this thing on one of these cables, just so that we can, I don't know, prove that it plugs in. And I should probably be paying more attention to this. Actually, I'm kind of curious if there are bespoke left and rights on here. And there are, actually. I do think that the headphone is symmetrical, but it does look like there are left and right indicators on it to suggest that one side is the true left and the other is the true right. You could also go by the orientation of the logo on the top. Here with the connectors, it's going to be important to match these if you care, but because it does seem to be, again, a symmetrical design, you could probably go either way if you wanted to. But yeah, let's go ahead and throw this on the dome and see what we think about it. How's that look on my head? I feel like I'm gonna look at myself down here. I don't normally like to do that, but that does feel like it is a more compact fit on the head than the X2s. And just for comparison, here's what the X2s look like on a dome like mine. You can just see that the headband is a little bit large and pokes out a little bit. Go back here to the X3s. Well, I don't know, maybe it's not too much different. But yeah, I don't know, that's the Philips Fidelio X3. Like I mentioned, this is just an unboxing and first look. I'm not gonna be able to give you much more of an impression of this headphone right now because I gotta spend some time living with it. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna spend at least a week, probably a couple of weeks living with this headphone and comparing it to, well, the original X2 or the X2 HR as I've got. But this thing costs 350 bucks, so I'm also gonna compare it to some other top headphones in this price range. My personal favorite is the Sennheiser HD600, which I've got sitting over here. And then sitting over here, I've got the Hyphaman Sundara, which is also a very well-regarded headphone in this price range. So you've got some options at 350 bucks. We'll see how the X3 stacks up. I mean, I can say that, you know, versus the X2s, or maybe where the X2s kind of fit in this company, is that this is a bit of a V-shaped headphone. And if you want something that's got like a big sound stage, a little bit more, maybe a fair bit more bass than you would get on something like the Sundara, and especially the Sennheisers, that's kind of where the Fidelio X2 is. And again, also, like I mentioned, this is one of the only headphones in this price range and of this ilk that works really well off of a smartphone. It doesn't need a ton of power. It's gonna get a lot louder at the same volume levels than either of these headphones sitting back here. I'm curious to see, does the X3 do the same? So yeah, that is, again, that's gonna be kind of the end of my first impressions. If you're interested in checking this thing out, of course, I've got a link in the description down below. If you like this video, you can hit the like button, you can subscribe to the channel, and maybe I'll see you on the next super review of the Philips Fidelio X3. If you're watching me live, or if you're just kind of curious and what the live stream wants to know, well, we're gonna have a little live Q&A right now. So, folks, thanks for sticking around, and if If you've got questions about the X3, hit me up right now. I'm gonna break eye contact and look at the chat. All right, that is the X3. I'm gonna start with the what's ups. I got a couple from Kevon, Darren Mitch, Marty McFly. How's it going, folks? Welcome to Super Review Live, Super Unbox Live. I don't know. I don't have a brand for it. Should I brand everything? I don't think so. Rashaman saying, this is the first time I'm seeing these. Loved the X2. So yeah, actually fun fact, I've seen some hints of these things for, I don't know, almost a year now. I feel like I saw some pictures of these things at like a trade show last year. And I thought it was a pretty handsome looking headphone, but didn't know a ton about it or when it would be coming out. My friend actually though, that introduced me to the X2, he's gotta be the biggest Fidelio X2 fan in the world. I just told him, I think on Friday, that I had this set in and he'd never even heard about it, and he might be watching right now and jealous that I've got it. But feel free to come over and check it out sometime in the next couple of weeks. Raphael with the high-res placebo gang. Yeah, you know what? I kind of debated whether or not to wear the high-res placebo t-shirt on this video. I don't want to come across as if I'm mocking the product. I appreciate that Philips has sent this to me for review, but high-res audio is a bit of a crock. It's a bit of a placebo. Mr. Space, heck yeah, placebo. I agree, heck yeah, placebo. You know what, there's nothing wrong with placebo either. Like I'm not hating on placebo, just know what you're getting into. Zero11 is suggesting I listen to the Inception soundtrack. Is that a pretty good soundtrack to listen to on a bassy open back headphone? Like I don't even know if this is actually bassy, but assuming it's kind of picking up where the X2 HR left off, I kind of anticipate it's going to be a little bit bassy. Maybe some other things to call out, like, so the X2 HR, I've had this for a few years now. I got this before I had heard the Sennheiser HD600s, and then I later ended up buying the HD600s. And personally, I haven't actually really much gone back to the Fidelio X2. I prefer the sound signature of the Sennheisers. It's just it's more of a neutral mid-range focused sound, whereas this is more of a bass and treble. I think that the bass on this is pretty satisfying. It is pretty fun, frankly. The mid-range, it does feel a bit recessed versus some other headphones in this price range, like again, versus the Sennheisers or even the Sundaras. But I don't know, I feel like it is still pretty good sounding headphone. I'm curious to see if the X3 kind of continues that same sound signature. I assume they're gonna continue that same sound signature, and I'm curious to see how they try to improve it. Rolkling is asking, how much did I pay for these? So I paid $0 for these. Just full disclosure, Philips sent these to me for review. They did not pay me for a review. This is just like a lot of other reviews that I do where manufacturers or retailers will send me the product for review. Whenever I do this, whenever I accept a product from them, I make it clear up front that I am not guaranteeing positive coverage. I'm just guaranteeing that I'm gonna do some videos about your product. I'm gonna post about it on Instagram. And what I say is going to be my personal opinion. So that's kind of the arrangement that I have with Philips, as well as any other company that has sent me stuff for review. Gilgamesh, bruh, you got the X3. That's right, I did get the X3. It's actually kind of surprising. Yeah, like I mentioned, this thing's not available right now. At least I don't think so. Philips rep told me that this thing is going to be launching, what did they say? They said it was going to be available, or the posting was going to be available on September 1st, and then it's launching on September 15th. But curiously, they have postings on their website and on Amazon now. You could buy it now on Amazon if you wanted to, but Amazon says it doesn't ship until August 31st, which is about a week from now. So there's a little bit of confusing information out there. I'm generally gonna guess that Amazon's pretty accurate, but we'll find out. Troy Hance pointing out the one single-ended, one balanced cable. Yep, that's what we got. I think that's smart of them to do. I wish, however, I don't know. Maybe part of me actually wishes that rather than including in the box 2 cables, one balanced and one single-ended, I kind of prefer they would have just sent one maybe 3mm or 3-meter cable, one 10-foot cable, and then one shorter one for portable use because, yeah, I don't know. I find that for a headphone like this, probably 5-foot is about what I want. 6-foot cable is much more common, and I'm fine with a 6-foot cable. But 5-foot's probably about what I want because you can see this is my DAC amp desktop situation over here. I'm usually not sitting too far from it, so a 5-foot cable is long enough for me. A 10-foot cable, this is too long. I'm going to end up winding it up and have part of it wound up, but I mean that's not too much unlike most of my other headphones. Mohammed saying, like the mesh, reminds me of Logitech headphones. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good aesthetic. What do you think? You know, again, versus the X2s, I think this looks cooler, but this looks maybe a little bit more grown up, which maybe that's an interest. I don't know. I'm curious if that's the aesthetic or that's the audience that they're necessarily going after with the X3. If this is still a bassy headphone, not necessarily for the grown-ups, although as a grown-up myself, I'm not afraid of bass, so there you go. Kleenex saying, I disassembled my X2, was too loose on the head. Interesting. So, I mean, one thing to call out here, I don't know if, well, let's go back to the overhead camera. That's probably where you will see it the most. The X2, you can see that this thing is not clamping itself closed, right? There's very little clamping pressure here on the X2, and that can be a positive thing in terms of just being an all-day comfortable headphone. But maybe for folks like Kleenex, like it's just not a very tight fit. And I can't say I ever personally had an issue with it, but I'm also not doing anything usually when I listen to headphones. If you are moving around, if you're taking these things on, you know, your commute or something like that, I can imagine wanting to have a tighter fit. It does seem like the X3 fits a little bit tighter, although I still think that the clamping pressure is not too hard. This is not like the Sennheiser HD600s or the HD6XX. Those are pretty well known for having tight clamp, and this is, at least on first impression, nowhere near that. Azim saying cloth ew. Not a fan? I don't know. I mean, I think it's a cool look. Again, in comparison to the X2, I think the X2 is a little bit cooler, but I'm only comparing them because they have the same name. If this thing didn't have that name, I would say that's a handsome looking headphone, and I wouldn't think anything more about it. Shovik is asking, will you be reviewing the Hyphaman Sundara? And do you think Ibeso DX160 is a good DAP for Sundara? I'm considering this combo. So I wasn't planning on reviewing the Sundara. I just picked it up because I was interested in comparing it to the Fidelio, knowing that they're priced similarly, and I thought it would be worth me having that perspective. I wasn't planning on doing a review of it, but we'll see how it works out. And then the Ibeso DX160, I haven't used it myself personally. I can say that I'm pretty sure the DX160 is more powerful than my Sony NWA 105 Walkman. And I'm able to get the Sundara's plenty loud on the Walkman. I am pushing it, you know, toward the top of its volume range. It's a little bit of a, I don't know, it's a hard to drive headphone, but it is the sort of thing that's going to be easier to drive off of a desktop amp. Again, the Ibeso, I assume it'll do pretty well, but I haven't used it myself, so I can't really say. Hank McCoy, FiO FH3, shower tape, or the Richo Peacock Spring IMs. Well, given the fact I have not heard any of those 3 headphones or those earphones, I can't tell you. Foremost TV Recode saying, wow, it sucks, S-U-K-S. So I'm curious, feel free to please elaborate. And in fact, actually, it looks like you elaborated a little bit down below. Okay, this is funny. So you said, I don't like the ear pads. And then you said, if it's leather plus good sound, I'm sold, LOL. So yeah, the ear pads are not leather, which I'm okay with. You know, most open back headphones, they like I mentioned, they will have sort of a velour or a Alcantara suede fit. So I don't mind that it's not leather there. It is real leather here. Oh man, that smells good. But yeah, we'll find out about the price. But it's weird to see you go from, wow, it sucks, to, if it's leather and it's good sound, I'm sold, LOL. I mean, I guess that's all of us, really. Francis Ferrara asking, is it on sale now? As far as I know, no. But I mean, you can actually, the Amazon listing is live. You can buy it on Amazon, but it doesn't look like they're saying it won't ship until August 31st. So about 7 or 8 days from now. DNT Arc saying they definitely look modern, but IMO, the headband arc, is still a little bit odd. There's something about this that it doesn't even necessarily feel smaller in my head, but there is something about it that I think looks a little bit better than the arc of the X2. Maybe it's that the X2 is a little bit egg-shaped. You can kind of see that rather than it being round, it's a little bit pointy at the top, just mildly so, but aesthetically, it's enough that I do prefer the head look of the X3, at least here on first impression. Troy asking, do you think the FIO BTR3K can drive these? I'm gonna guess probably can, but I'll be honest, I don't have the FIO BTR3K, so I can't say for sure. And also I haven't plugged these things into anything. My guess is that yes, because the Philips Fidelio X2s, these things are pretty easily driven from most anything. And I'm guessing that with the X3, they've kind of gone for a similar market. Grim Life asking, would you say that the bass on the X2 HR is punchy? So back here with the X2 HR, yeah, I mean, I think that of, you know, open back headphones that I have, the bass is probably the punchiest, the strongest here on the X2 HR. I mean, if you put the word punchy in quotes, maybe you're looking for a little bit more than just an evaluation of the volume of the bass, because the volume is quite high, and maybe you're asking a little bit more about the quality of the bass. I mean, yeah, I think the bass on the X2 HR, just the X2, I think punchy is certainly a viable adjective. Juco Bob asking, do you know if they work with Hyphaman cables? So, interestingly, so the Sundara that I just got also has basically the same connection setup with the dual 3.5 millimeter connectors. And I believe it will work with the Hyphaman. I believe it will work with the Hyphaman cables, and I could probably check that out right about now, but it's going to be a bit of a hassle. The Sundara that I have has the exact same connectors on the cable that I got with it, so it does seem like it's the same cable setup, the same number of poles. They're both 3-pole, 3.5 millimeters, so yeah, it seems highly likely. Anton saying, my impression of the X2 was very wide soundstage with nice bass, but otherwise somewhat empty presentation and weird treble. So yeah, if I were to be, you know, critical of the X2, you know, I mentioned that I'm more of a mid-range aficionado, and these lean more toward a V-shaped sound with elevated treble, elevated bass. I do think that the bass is probably the highlight of the X2, as well as the soundstage, as Anton suggested. The treble, you know, I've heard some people describe the treble with, you know, certain problematic words. I don't know that I necessarily think that the treble is gritty, which is a term that I've heard people describe it. But it's not the most detailed treble. It's not the best treble. It's a little bit too elevated for my tastes. Or I don't even, that's not the right way to say that, because I'm a bit of a treble head, so it's not necessarily that it's too elevated, but it does lack a little bit of body, so it feels like it's a bit thin sounding in the treble, and maybe that's what you're alluding to. I'm not sure, Anton, but if that were to be my critique of it, it's mostly that the treble character of the X2 HR leaves a bit to be desired, and I think is outdone by these other headphones. We'll find out about the X3 though. And then I saw also, Anton, you asked, does the X3 have a fuller sound? Answer is TBD, to be determined. I haven't heard these things yet. I just unboxed it and have not even bothered to plug it in. Krishna's asking which IM to go to for $100. I think if you can get a hold of the Etymotic ER2 XR and you're okay with that deep insertion, I think that's my favorite $100 IEM right now. Anton asking, do I plan to review the FiO FD1? I'm not planning to review that one. I do think that FiO is sending me the new FH3, which is their 3-driver hybrid IM, but the FD1 is not one. Christian, I see you're also asking about the Moondrop Starfields. Is that a good choice? Yeah, I think the Starfield is a great choice for around $100. In fact, I think that's probably like the most recommended IEM in that price range right now. I personally picked the Etymotic ER2 XR just because I think the mid-range presentation is superior there. But a lot of people like the Starfield, so definitely not a bad option there. Winkern is asking, would I prefer a headphone with an adjustable band or a platter band? Is that the name for this, a platter band? Personally, I like these. What's another headphone that I have that has this design? I've got the Meze, actually the Meze 99 Classics that have also got this design. I love this. I don't have to worry about fitting it to my head. I don't have to worry about adjusting it just right. I don't have to worry about my OCD and trying to make sure that each side is adjusted the exact same amount. I just pull it on my head and there we go. I mean, there might be sort of a downside, a potential downside with this sort of fit, is that you do have sort of an elastic pressure pushing down on the top of your head, because you can see my head is sort of stretching this band out. And so I could see how for some people that might create sort of an unwanted pressure point, but I can't say I've personally ever had any issues with it, at least not on the headphones that I've tried so far. So the X2, the Mezes, I'm pretty okay with it. Here, I don't know, it does seem like the elastic band on the X3s is, and maybe it's just because it's brand new, but it does seem that the elastic band here on the X3 is a little bit tighter than the elastic band on those other two headphones. So we'll see if that luck with pressure points and avoiding pressure points holds up with this one. I play drunk. Holy 350 bucks. I'm just gonna stick with my Fostex Ebony. Yeah, 350 bucks is, yeah, that's not cheap, but let's see what we can compare this thing to. I think when the X2 came out, it was 300 bucks. Interestingly, you can get these things on Amazon now for like 140. So 140 to 350. Hopefully these things do something better. I mean, always when you get into audio and spending more money, there is sort of a law of diminishing returns that in my experience seems to hold pretty true, but we'll see how these things hold up. But I wonder if a lot of people that are looking at the Fidelio X3 are also maybe cross-shopping. I don't know, because this is like such a mainstream brand, Philips, is this going to get into the consciousness of folks that are looking at something like the Sony WH-1000XM3s, which obviously a totally different category of headphone, but I think a lot of people just kind of look at that as a $350 headphone and think, I want the best headphone I can get. I like Sony, people love this headphone, I'm gonna get the XM3s. I'm gonna guess that this sounds quite a bit better than something like the XM3s, but obviously a lot less technology packed into here. Warren Kong asking, do you have a suggestion for a budget $50 to $70 IEM with good isolation? Interesting question. So the IEMs, $50 to $70. I mean, Etymotic does make an earphone around that price range. I think it's called the MK5. I haven't heard it myself, but ostensibly that will isolate quite well. I do also have the Etymotic, they call it the Ety Kids model, which is about 50 bucks. And I actually quite like that earphone. It's obviously gonna isolate quite well because it's an Etymotic and it fits quite deep. The only downside to the Ety Kids is it's a 600 ohm headphone. So if you're playing it on a really powerful source, it won't be a problem. You're just gonna have to jam that volume pretty high. But if you're playing it off a smartphone, probably not gonna get much volume out of something like that. What else? Like $50 to $70 that isolates especially well. I can't really think of much. I mean, I get a pretty deep fit off of something like the Moondrop SSR. It doesn't like take up a lot of space in my inner ear, so there's not a lot of isolation there, but because it fits fairly narrow, I can get a pretty deep fit on that, and that isolates, I think, maybe a little bit better than average, but for the most part, I don't know. Can't really think of too much. Tarks, I see you asked some questions about the X3 and where to get it, how much, etc., etc. So where I got it, Philips sent it to me. I believe it comes out on, this is going to depend on who you listen to. Philips is telling you this thing will be available, will be shipping on September 15th. Amazon tells me this thing is shipping on August 31st. It is available now on Amazon. You can pre-order it, I guess, and it is 350 bucks. Creon asking me, can you share with us your test tracks? What streaming service are you using? So test tracks, I'll answer that question first. I have a playlist on my YouTube channel. In fact, I have it in a comment pinned below this video right now. I have a playlist of what I call reference tracks. These are just a lot of songs that I like to use for reference. They're not necessarily the songs I always use. Like I don't tend to just go through this one reference list and go song by song and see how does it do with that one. That's not typically how I do it, but I think this reference list is a good example or sort of a good, I think just a good reference for you to understand the kind of music that I listen to. And the things that music does well is going to be the stuff that I look for in a headphone like this. So yeah, check out my reference list. Now, as far as streaming services, I actually don't really use streaming services very much. I do have a YouTube Plus subscription, so I have access to YouTube Music. I was using Google Music for a while, but they seem to be shutting down that service. So I do use YouTube Music occasionally to check out new stuff, but for the most part, I buy all of my music, and I will buy either compact discs and then rip them to FLAC, or I will just buy FLAC from Bandcamp. Corey is asking, I just got the Meze 99s last week. I know open to closed, talking about the difference between the 99 Classics is a closed back headphone, but are the signatures similar to the Fidelio X2s? That's interesting. I can't say that I've head-to-head compared that's not how you say that. I haven't done like a head-to-head comparison between the X2s and the Mezes. I would describe both of them as V-shaped, so in that sense they are probably pretty similar. The Mezes, I think, probably much stronger in the bass, especially in the mid bass. If you've got that, so you've got that headphone, If you're willing to take a little bit of a chance, I actually recommend checking out the Brainwaves micro suede ear pads that you can get for they're the medium, the small ovals? Hold on, let me think. It's not the small ovals, it's just the regular ovals. So the Brainwaves micro suede ovals ear pads. That's my favorite ear pad on the Meze 99 Classics. Brock saying, go back to your old format. If I was doing my old format, Brock, you wouldn't be able to tell me that. So I'm actually curious. I keep asking people this question. People ask me not to do live streams anymore. What is it that you miss? What is it that you don't want? Or what is it that you want that you're not getting out of these videos? Because I can address that. When people just tell me that they want me to not do live streams anymore, I can't really, that's not addressing the need. I need to know what the need is for me to address something. Anton saying 350 can work if they deliver on the sound, the build looks good enough. Yeah, I mean, yeah, 350 bucks. Like I mentioned, these headphones that I've got sitting over here, these Sennheiser HD 600s, these are $300 headphone. The Hyphaman Sundaras, this is a $350 headphone. 350 bucks for a headphone is definitely not unheard of, but those are really good headphones, and I don't know, we'll find out if the Fidelio X3 can stand up to it. Diego saying Final Audio E2000 could be an option. I think referring to the $50 IEM that isolates well. Because yeah, the Final E2000 is it's a similar kind of bullet style earphone. It's not going to take up a lot of space in your ear, but it can fit fairly deep. And because of that, you might be able to get a little bit better isolation. And yeah, Mr. Beast of East saying 600 ohms, that's crazy. So yeah, the thing about the Eddie Kids, the Etymotic Eddie Kids earphone, is it's meant to protect the hearing of kids. It's meant to be like an earphone that a kid could never like blast their eardrums out with. So they made it 600 ohms. Little did Etymotic know about headphone amplifiers, and I can still blast my eardrums out with it if I want to. I don't want to though. Hank about the Thea Audio Legacy, I don't think I'm going to be reviewing that one. I'm kind of interested in the Legacy 3 Custom, just because of the price seems about right for what I'm interested in investing in a custom, but I got to get your impressions before that. But yeah, I don't know. I gotta go eat dinner or something like that. So that is the end of this first look here at the Philips Fidelio X3. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button. And if you want to know what I think about this headphone, subscribe to the channel, and I'm going to be following up with a full review. I'm going to spend some time comparing this to the X2, comparing it to the Sundaras, and comparing it to my Sennheiser HD 600s, because there's a lot of competition in this price range, and you guys got to know. But yeah, that is the end of this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.